Hello everyone, we are back here to talk to you today about New Zealand and Maori culture. I'm Rosana Mello from EPIS and
I'm Bex from EPIS.
that's quite funny, isn't it? But we have to say that because if people are watching us for the first time and they need to know what we are. And EPIS is a business that supports people on work holiday visa in New Zealand. Today we're going to talk about Maori culture. That is one of it's funny to say that, but one of the attractions in New Zealand, right? When
Yes,
I remember
yeah.
when I was going to New Zealand, I remember seeing photos and videos of the haka and Maori people with like tattoos and holding the weapons, I would say, right?
Yes, and yeah.
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 So and today living in New Zealand for quite a while, I think it's quite funny to see them like only as attractions because they are part of the people, right?
Yeah, they're a huge part of New Zealand life, everyday life. Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering why people talk so much about like Maori culture. And can you just...
Yeah, I think, well, it is unique in the world. I mean, it's indigenous culture. So the Maori people came to New Zealand, over 1,000 years ago from a place called Hawaiki or Haiki, which is near Hawaii. So there's some similarities with Hawaiian culture, but it is unique to New Zealand. And I think that is why it is so noticeable and why it stands out so much. But I also think what has happened in New Zealand, because there's obviously a lot of countries in the world that have an indigenous culture but have been colonized by other cultures. And I think we really embrace it in New Zealand and have just worked for it to become a part of daily life, particularly when it comes to celebrations or events or probably, you mentioned the haka, and the haka I think is known worldwide as that funny dance that our rugby team does at the beginning of a game. So it's received a lot of worldwide attention from that. But also whenever like the royal family or other famous world leaders come to New Zealand, there's always a Maori pōwhiri or welcome at the beginning of that journey, which is broadcast around the world. And it's probably pretty interesting for people to see. I think the last time Prince William and Kate came, and there's a great shot of Kate Middleton, waiting for them to finish, and the view is of the back of the Maori guy, and you can see his butt with the grass scourge on it, and it's gone worldwide. And there's lots of funny news stories about, oh wow, this is a bit cheeky, but that's just part of culture, and he was welcoming them, and that's part of our tradition. So I think there's all of that plays into it. It's just a really neat culture that is part of our everyday life. So
yeah, I think it's really cool actually, and there's that way that they put nose to nose as well. I'm not sure.
The hongi. So yeah, that's very respectful, and you see, when they do that, it's quite weird when you do it for the first time because it is very close to someone you don't know. Yeah. But it's a huge sign of respect. Yeah.
Yeah, I know, and I'm just saying that because sometimes like people go to New Zealand like I did, and I had no idea that this is like kind of normal depending where you are and with whom you are. And I used to share a house with a Maori guy, and it was really nice to see his family would come over and he would just do like that. And I didn't know before I go to New Zealand that it was something respectful. And when people walk towards me to do that, I would feel like a bit uncomfortable at first because I
Mm-hmm.
had no idea, and that's why I'm mentioning here, because maybe whoever is watching us uh,
Yeah.
will come to New Zealand, and if you see that happening, that's cool. That's quite
Yeah.
normal. And if they do this with you in, like, I don't know, usually they do it if you are in a ceremony or in a special place or occasion, or it's not like, oh, I'm walking the street and people are doing the
No, it's normally something that sort of
yeah,
different, special, yeah, is
yeah.
happening.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because I've
Yeah.
been to some events and everybody, they would go around and like
Mm-hmm.
uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
greeting everybody this way, and
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
was quite
Yeah.
quite
There's a lot
interesting.
of good protocol. It's a very respectful and a very inclusive culture. You
Yeah,
know, they would always happily explain to you why something works like it does as well, which is quite neat. It's not, oh, you made a mistake. It's, oh no, this is what we do, you know, and we press our noses together and, you know, that kind of
yeah.
thing.
And another thing is like, I'm just remembering here, every big event you go, they have like a blessing or something at the beginning in
Yeah.
Maori, and
Yeah.
it's just like, okay, I don't speak Maori, but you can kind of feel it. They just
Yeah. You
say
can
lots
tell
of
what it is.
words, and
It's
yeah,
a blessing or a Maori prayer. Karakia. Karakia is what
yeah,
they'll do. Yeah.
yeah,
And then if it's a ceremonial event, they'll always have the pōwhiri, which is the welcome, and that's got a lot of protocols. And that's where you hear the sort of sounds like wailing. You know, you'll have someone
yeah,
singing really loudly, and the sort of challenge, and people walk very slowly. And I've often seen those happening, and for the people who are being welcomed who might not be familiar with Maori culture, there's generally always somebody with them just telling them what's happening, just letting them
yeah.
know what the next thing is. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Mm.
beautiful, and
Yeah,
because it's so rich in culture.
yeah,
Really, is many different aspects of it coming together, because they sing, right,
they
and
sing.
there are
Yeah,
like women's singing, and then the men coming to like kind of a fight or something,
yeah, yeah,
just
it's
a
very,
pretend fight, or
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Well, they're laying down a challenge, and yeah, and then the woman, well, they'll be doing the poise, and they're very
yeah,
talented, and they're very beautiful voices and harmonies, and yeah, very, yeah. I get a spine tingle thinking about it. It's very emotional. It's full of feeling. It's full of beautiful feelings, you know, and it's all about welcoming people in, you know. Yeah,
I totally agree. It's just feeling, and I think it's very impressive that New Zealand managed to keep it, because you
yeah,
see
yeah,
so many countries where they this just or either got forgotten, or they just kept doing the modern things, and just
yeah,
left behind. And I
yeah,
can see in Brazil, for example, we should have the indigenous somewhere, but they all
yeah,
hidden, and
yeah, mm,
is- the ones that has contact with people, with white people, like they say, is
yeah,
is very different. It's really
yeah,
different, and we
mhm,
don't see anything about
yeah,
the culture inset in our day to day. And that's
yeah,
something that struck me when I went to New Zealand, because you
yeah,
could see it. You could see carvings as well. That's so pretty
yeah.
everywhere.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Everywhere.
Well, in my lifetime, and I'm quite a bit older than you, I've seen a change with us really embracing Maori culture as a part of everyday life and making it really important. Particularly, I know what places like government, obviously, any kind of government department or big organization like that, all of the places of learning, so universities and polytechs and schools, um, yeah, they'll always have these very, yeah, they'll always have the Maori pōwhiri and the karakia and they will, you know, they really have made, there's been a real movement towards all that inclusivity again. because there was a real sense that we had for a while, this is a long time ago, lost those traditions that are a deep, huge part of the New Zealand culture, and we needed to bring them back in the forefront so people could see them all the time. And I think Kiwis in general are incredibly proud of that culture, you know, and that it is such a daily part of life, you know.
And how much of New Zealand population are Maori today? Do you know?
It's approximately 15%. You know, put down that they will be part Maori. My understanding is there's no full Maori blooded people left, but there's a lot with, you know, all the way
Really?
through. So
Oh, I
yeah.
didn't know that.
So about 15%. I think I looked it up. There's about 750,000. Yeah,
Mm,
Maori.
yeah.
Yeah, that sounds about right, doesn't it? Yeah. So they obviously, when they came to New Zealand, there's a huge. I grew up in the South Island, and there's a lot less Maori people in the South Island. I think I always have joked and said, "What's so cold down there that it would have been
I
hard to
was
have
going
come
to say
there."
that probably when they arrived, there was very like early on.
Yeah,
Would be better for them to stay in
the north. Yeah,
North Island. Yeah.
the northern part of all of North Island, but particularly the east coast, and then right up Northland. And yeah, so there's a lot of different tribes, and you'll see, you know, and you just learn where the different tribes come from. So, you know, they'll Ngāti is the word, and they'll just talk about the different tribes all around the country, and they are very connected to the land, to the sea, to the mountains, to all the elements of nature. And so there's a real connect with that.
Yeah.
And so anything that is looking at being changed, or there's issues going on that has to do with any part of New Zealand, the Maori tribes always have to be a part of that consultation process and need to be involved in any decisions and so on. And there must be blessings and, you know, all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah,
yeah.
I thought you touching something very cool there. That is like how connected they are with nature, and
Mm.
it's because like even the tales, right? They have tales for
Mm.
everything.
Yeah,
That is
yeah,
so
they do.
cool,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's
So
like
great,
how
great storytellers. Yeah.
yeah, and like I think for somebody that is going to visit New Zealand, I think that's something that worth
Yeah.
to find out and to go and to try to get
Yeah.
somebody to tell this tale. I remember I was in Napier once, and I went in that waka, the
Yeah, the wooden canoe. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
they were telling stories like while we were there, and it's just so cool because they have explanation for everything, how
Mm-hmm.
New Zealand like was created. They have their own stories, their own
Yeah.
version of
Yeah,
everything.
they do. Yeah.
And
And
yeah,
that's what they came to New Zealand in, one of those wooden canoes. Can you believe it? So, you know,
yeah,
high
I
sea.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
did say that, and it's just like crazy to think in that
Mm,
old times and looking at the stars and
yeah.
just arrive
Yeah.
in a very
Yeah.
small country that is New Zealand.
Yeah.
And yeah, mm,
Recently, there's been some, I've heard articles on the radio and seen on TV and so on. There's been lots of expeditions of young people and taking them to teach them the ways of the Maori elders, and sailing on a waka from
wow,
the Pacific Islands to New Zealand. And the young people have been taught the old ways that they have to navigate using the stars, and,
yeah,
you know, doing all that kind of stuff as well.
yeah.
So yeah,
That
there's doing a lot to keep the traditions alive, which is really neat. Yeah,
if they don't pass it on, he's gonna get lost,
yeah,
definitely. Because who is gonna really learn how to
yeah,
do it in the future if
yeah,
you have all
yeah,
these modern technologies and
yeah.
you can get other ways? But it's interesting to understand how they used to do in the past, and
Mm-hmm.
if something happening like now, we have a
Yeah,
pandemic, right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
life
We
is
need to
changing.
know. Yeah, we
Yeah,
need to know how to go back to how it all
yeah,
works.
yeah. I think it's great. And something
And
that
Maori language as well. I think that's something I've noticed is how, you know, Maori or Te Reo is what they call it, is one of the you know, official languages of New Zealand.
Yeah.
And it is every place name, every building of importance, you know, most places now, like, again, places of learning, government buildings, organizations, all that stuff, all have the name in English and the name in Maori.
Yeah.
Place names will always have both names. There's lots of places in New Zealand that in my lifetime have changed to become called by the Maori original name rather than the name they were given when the English, you know, colonized New Zealand.
Yeah.
So Te Reo, like Maori, is taught at school.
Yeah.
It's really important for all children have to learn it. There's full immersion schools.
I was going to say that is really interesting how they actually managed to keep this one as well. Actually, Maori is one of the official languages in New Zealand, right?
Yeah, it is.
So like, many people don't know New Zealand has like 3 official languages: English, Sign Language, and Maori. And then when people ask, I've talked about this with some random people, and they always ask, "Oh, but so people speak Maori in New Zealand, like?" And I was thinking, "Oh, nah, I would like to. I would like to speak Maori, but I think it means that they teach at school, right? That's what it means. It is an official language, is accepted. We have a TV channel only in Maori."
Yeah,
So, like, people really want to.
There's radio stations. A lot more Maori is used on the radio and on TV. You know, there's been a real movement with that, and that's fantastic. The radio station I listen to, they use a lot of Te Reo, and it's often stuff that I don't know exactly what they're saying, but because of what and when they're saying it, they're saying, you know what they're saying, and you start to learn and sort of, you know, but there's lots of words. I was thinking about words that are used all the time, and we use them instead of an English word often. Words like whānau, you know, we talk whānau is a really great word. It means family, but it means family and friends. So the people that you are surrounded by. So when you talk about your whānau, you know, that's what you mean. And a lot, you know,
that is the true family, right? Is who you believe is your family.
So the friends are the family you choose, is what they say. So you've got your family and your friends. You know, a word I've noticed getting a lot of people using it all the time lately is mahi, which means work. So people will be talking and they'll say, "Oh, you've got to put in the mahi, man, or you're not going to pass your exams," you know, that kind of thing. And kai for food. You know, there's lots of words we use every day that it's a Kiwi word as opposed to, you know, it's a Maori word, if you like. So
that's a good way to say that. Really a Kiwi word. I remember, like, when I worked for the university, and they had lots of Maori words there as well. Every meeting room had a Maori name to it. There was lots of celebration. And one thing that I actually, when I first arrived in New Zealand, that surprised me as well was the Maori Language Week. And they should do it, right? So like every year they have 1 week where they kind of celebrate the language, right? So they try to incentivize somehow people to talk and to say Maori words. And I remember I used to work in a cafe, and they have the menu all in Maori, and that was my first kind of like attempt to read and say the words, and it was really interesting, and it put you in touch of it with it. And if you don't know,
they'll send out. I know years ago when Maori Language Week first came out, when they first started to really try to celebrate it a lot more, they would send out kits to people, and the kit would come and it would have, you know, lots of name tabs you could put on all the things around the house, so the kids could not, you know, not call it the fridge, they call it the Maori word for the fridge, you know, and those sorts of things, so that people could just start using, you know, those words every day, counting in Maori and
Yeah,
things like that. So
yeah,
making it fun, so, you know,
yeah.
people
And
just
like
do it.
you talking about kids also, I remember when my daughter were at daycare, and she used to arrive home singing in Maori, because they
Mm-hmm.
also do it a lot, and
Yeah.
they
My
teach
niece and
them songs.
nephew and other kids, so could say, oh, we learned a Maori song today.
Yeah,
Well, they don't say Maori, they say we learned in Te Reo today, we learned this, and then they start singing it, or, you
yeah.
know, showing me
It's
this and that, and it's
beautiful,
really
right?
cool.
Yeah,
It's great.
yeah.
Yeah, it's really good. So, yeah.
And like we're talking about this, and just talking about this, we can see how integrate they are to society,
Mm-hmm.
right? So
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
don't live in the old ways anymore. Is there
No.
any tribe still like living in the old ways?
Oh,
Any?
I think certainly in the probably in the north and East Cape, there's definitely places where, you know, they're not living, you know, like in a old time Maori village, but they speak a lot of te reo, and they abide by a lot of the traditions, and they probably eat a lot of the traditional food, you know, and do things. But, you know, there are also Rotorua, you know, different places you can go, and you can go on a cultural experience to be taken, you know, and shown how things worked, and be sort of a part of that for an hour or so. Yeah.
And what is that like the cultural experience? Is there like a place where they kept things what they were?
Yeah,
Uh-huh.
yeah. There's a place I went when I was really young, and I haven't been back since. But I know I've watched, you know, things about it. It's, you're going into a Maori village, and they'll explain how all the different parts of the village work, and the marae, which is the meeting house. You can elect to learn how to do some wood carving. There's lots of places where you can be taught to do bone carving. And you can make your own punamu, which is the jade or greenstone, or bone carving. You'll learn, guys will learn the haka, and the females will learn the woman's traditional dance, and maybe learn to do the poise and the, you know, different things. Yeah, so you get to do all that, you know, and there'll be the whole village set out how it would have been, like how they made the food, you know, before the English came and colonized and sort of brought different
Yeah,
ways of cooking and things like that. So,
you were
yeah.
talking there, and I'm thinking here, what is tradition like? What is still like Maori tradition? When you see it, this is Maori. The green stone, right? The green
Yeah,
stone that is
greenstone and the
really
wood
famous
carving.
for New Zealand. Yeah, wood carving, and what else did you say?
Hangi. So when they cook
Hangi.
the traditional way, so whenever there's a big event, there'll be we're going to put a hangi down, is what they say. So you're digging that hole, the hot rocks go in, the food's all wrapped. In the old days, it would have all been wrapped in leaves, but these days they use tin foil, you know.
Yeah.
Easier,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know,
yeah.
and then it all goes in, and then the dirt goes over the top, and it's left in the ground for a few hours to cook, and so the flavors are all earthy and smoky, and, you know,
I
those
buy
things.
it. It's so good. I'm just,
Yeah, it's really good.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. And it's usually like meat and vegetables, and
yeah, yeah.
yeah, like potato and kumara,
Kumara,
right?
yeah, sweet potato,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, yeah. It's really, really nice. And
yeah,
I
really
think that people that goes to New Zealand, they like to
good.
go and see and try, because
Yeah,
like you said at the beginning, it's so unique.
it
It's
is unique.
it's
Yeah.
just like
And now there's with food, because New Zealand's such a foodie culture. I know there's a lot at the moment, because I follow a lot of that stuff, because I love, you know, different food and cuisines and so on. And there is the top, or one of the top restaurants or chefs in New Zealand at the moment, through our Big Food and Wine magazine, is a young Maori woman who has come back to New Zealand, having cooked overseas, and she's cooking traditional Maori food with a modern fusion style to it. And and then there's also, I can't remember the guy's name, but he's in Auckland and he does a thing called an urban hangi. So it's a hangi but in the city, and he also does a foraging walk. So you walk different places and he'll show, and you'll collect plants and things that are edible within the native bush and around the place that they can then take back to, and he shows them how to cook it and so on. So there's a lot of those kind of ways again of keeping the traditions alive, which is really neat. Yeah,
very interesting experience. I would like to do that.
Yeah,
to try the food and to go and like collect plants.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, so just for us to finalize today, Bex, I think it's a really good conversation. It's just flowing, right? Like we're talking about culture and so on. But yeah, so just to finalize, I would ask you, what do you think, being like a Kiwi, right, that the Maori culture added to New Zealand in the modern days that we live in now?
I think it adds tradition and culture, and adds a richness to our society that might not be there otherwise. They're a culture that story tells, and that could either be by singing or their actions or their dance and so on. And they have such a deep respect of our land, Aotearoa, the land of the long white cloud. So I think it is their land, and I think that's what they really add to the New Zealand, what's the word? New Zealand tapestry, is that a good word for it? So there's a whole mix of things, but it's just that real tradition that is really rich in history and is just really fun, inclusive.
I don't know if you agree, but I think they are really warm as well.
Incredibly warm. Yeah, really warm and friendly and loving. And when they say, "Come on over, we're having a hangi," they mean it. It's an absolute go and join them. Yeah,
that's why I just think it makes you feel home when you are with like a family, and they kind of take you in, and it's genuine, and that's
very genuine, and it's very authentic. Definitely.
Has a lot to do with New Zealand, I believe, because New Zealand is so beautiful and still raw somehow. The nature and it kind of makes sense to have the Maori there.
Totally. Absolutely.
Okay, so I think it was really good talking about the subject, and let's bring some more interesting issues next week for whoever's watching us here.
All right, sounds good. Okay, so kia ora.
Kia ora. See you later. Bye.